run too behind. So thank you all for coming and joining us today. It's great to see so many of you. Hopefully we'll have a few more people dropping in. So we're here to talk to you about changing relationships in the post-pandemic world, and we've chosen to focus on authors, customers, but also colleagues. So looking internally at what we've been doing as a company as well. So how do we basically connect and engage with these different groups, and how has that changed from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic? So first of all, who are we? So Bloomsbury Academic and Professional is actually over 15 years old. So we haven't been around for decades or centuries like many other publishers. We're actually very new. Oh, and I hope you can. Sorry, some technical issues here today. And so we're actually very new in the world of academia. Those supply have been around for many, many years. So, we're an independent publisher. We're growing. As I said, we're only about 15 years old, but we have grown a huge amount in the last 15 years. And our motto is to educate, inspire, and inform. We publish across a lot of core subject areas, from fashion to drama to politics to history. And we're really entrenched in quality and in our authorship, but more recently, making sure that we take our position as a social science and arts and humanities publisher very seriously in terms of the content that we publish, whether that's in book format, in digital format, in video or audio. Because we do publish books that can change the world. That's really important to us. But that in itself requires people to trust what we publish and to be able to trust who reviews that content and the way that we publish that content. And so, as mentioned in the previous session, a lot of debate is going on at the moment around trust and around AI and around ethics and around considering what is truth and what is not. And so we take that very seriously. So engagement and focus. So as this session is really looking at that kind of relationship building, that engagement with those key groups, as I said, we want to talk a little bit about our authors, about our customers, and then internally about our colleagues. I'll just hand over to my colleague, Michelle, now, who's going to talk you through some of that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Kelly. I hope you can hear me. So when Pooja was describing our mission statement and who we are as a publisher, one of the key words that we as employees at Bloomsbury latch on to is entrepreneurial, which is another word for transformation in some ways. So it's a word that you hear often at Bloomsbury, and it's a spirit within the company that comes directly from our CEO. Sorry, touched something there. It's something that we're asked to thread throughout our daily activity, and we're pushed to think about what we can do differently or continuously improve how we do something. So in addition to the overall brand message of excellence and originality, it's really something that we remind our teams of very, very often. So one area that we try to regularly apply this ethos is with our engagement with our community. And when I refer to community, I mean authors, customers, and colleagues. So when we engage with authors, customers, librarians, and colleagues, it's always about building our relationship of trust. So within Bloomsbury, just to explain, I specifically work on the digital resources team. It's a division that began in 2017. And we had to build everything from the ground up. And the publisher is only 15 years, and then 8 years later comes us. So it's important that we build trust within the brand and then true trust within the content. So with regard to authors, we've always focused on empowering our authors as advocates and evangelists for their work and for Bloomsbury. And it's essential that we instill confidence in our authors from the very beginning of their journey with us and throughout the publishing process. And again, this is not a revolutionary concept to anyone in the room, but as we'll talk about this, the pandemic really forced us and challenged us to think about this in many new ways. So with customers, in addition to our authors, they make up a very, very important part of our community, and building trust there is also key. When I refer to customers, I'm speaking of librarians and academics and students and instructors. And confidence in our brand is paramount when we test the waters or take the temperature about how they feel about us. So one example, just to give you, we recently engaged in a survey with our customers and asked them to provide us with one word they would use to describe Bloomsbury. And words like responsive or innovative or transformative or exceptional, which was very kind, were provided. And this really helps us take stock of where we are and how we may need to pivot in the way we present ourselves as a brand, in language, image, or in interaction with others. With regard to colleagues, I mention this because you can't build trust with external partners without building trust from the inside first. And the division of the business that I work within is only about 6 years old. So while it's directly connected to the wider business, like I said, we had to build everything from the ground up. We interacted with each other in an agile way that built confidence and enthusiasm in what we were trying to achieve, which is a digital business within Bloomsbury, and strengthen the overall brand of the entire business. So finally, while these may seem like very obvious concepts, we're really highlighting them because this was the groundwork that we laid to really tee us up for steady success throughout what was the most unprecedented times in any of our lives, the pandemic. So it was an unbelievable personal and professional challenge, but really pushed us to be better together and as a brand. Here we go. So during the pandemic, what did we do differently as a group? So early on in the pandemic, there was a real tendency to do more of everything. And in no other place was this more apparent than communication. We really tried to take a step back and methodically improve communication across the board with everyone. And this was a complete pivot to digital across the board. So with our authors, just a few notes here, our focus was really to bring them along with us and use this as an opportunity to bring them into the brand and empower them to work alongside of us as self-promoters. This was the great equalizer, and we were truly in this all together. So I think they embraced that feeling with us, and that's really what we tried to push upon them. So as far as customers go, it was really meeting our customers where they were, and where they were was in a bit of a crisis moment. I can still remember where I was in early March. I was visiting our London office. I was there with a colleague of mine. We were doing an extended stay, and we received an email from an East Coast university with a librarian in a little bit of a panic mode saying, "We're going off campus. We're closing the campus. What on earth do we do? And how can you help us?" So it was really, that was the seed that was planted within us. And we had a conversation. What can we generate for our customers, our librarians? How can we help? And how can we all get in this together to really formulate a solution? And that's what we did. And so I mentioned under customers here, we created an expanded access initiative, which was really opening up all of our content and really helping them promote this. It was an opportunity for us. It was an opportunity for them. We really didn't know where this was going, but we just trusted each other in the process that we were taking each other someplace great. So I pass off to Pooja for colleagues.
Yeah, and just to come back to colleagues in terms of then what did we do internally, it really made us redefine what it means to work as a team and how to connect with each other, especially when you don't see each other over coffee anymore, or bump into each other in the corridor, or just sort of catch 5 minutes with somebody after a meeting. How do you still maintain that level of communication and team building? So, we didn't see each other, so we had to find other ways to connect. And obviously, like everybody else, more virtual meetings. But how did we try to make those fun? So we had team coffee mornings. We started book clubs. We did a lot of things to make people feel like they were still part of a team. But we also actually made some more strategic changes. So we launched a number of employee networks actually over the last couple of years. So, for example, there is a Pride network, there is a Parents and Guardians and Carers network, there's a mental health network, there was a Black, Asian, ethnic minority background group, there's also a disability group. And what those networks were able to do was to bring people together to be honest and to talk about things that were affecting them. And actually, there was no other way for us to get through this together except to be able to talk about things that were personally affecting us, that also then were coming into our professional lives as well. Another strategic change we made was implement a DEI action plan, which only actually came into life in 2021. So we're only a couple of years into that plan, but have also have actually come a long way. And what was really important with that plan is that we do things that will be sustainable and show meaningful change over time. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And one of the other things we did was create a market research unit because things were changing. And, you'll hear, I think, probably a lot over the next few days about change and about what that actually means and how we need to adapt to be more flexible. The previous session was talking about agility and what that means. And so this will be, I think, a common theme. But what do we really want to change and how? And how do we measure that? Where's the data to back up what we think is happening and what is actually happening, whether that's in the librarian world, whether that's in terms of students, whether that's in terms of practitioners. So we developed a market research unit to really look into this in more detail. And lastly, in terms of strategic change, we also set up a number of working groups, which were actually led by the team. So identifying key areas where we could do things better, where actually now we're not seeing each other anymore, we need to do things differently. So again, taking DEI as an example, we have now a DEI working group that took that action plan and actually now are leading on implementing some of those things. And for example, we are now for the first time capturing data on ethnicity of all new authors. It's not mandatory, so it's a choice, but it gives us then a baseline data, because how do you know if you're doing any better if you haven't got something to measure it by? So, it's things like this that actually you have to start to implement and do from within. And we're also doing something similarly for all our staff as well internally. So again, not just diversifying our author base externally, but diversifying ourselves as a company internally as well. So what was the impact of all of these things that we changed? And I'll kick off again with colleagues, and then Michelle will come in to talk a bit about authors and customers. So as I said, one of the impacts of all of these things was actually being more honest and being more open as a company. And I think you can only really grow and thrive when everyone feels they're a part of what's going on. They understand the strategy, they understand the direction, and they're on that journey with you. So better communication for sure. And I think it did build more trust because we're all in this together. Not one person was not affected by what was going on. So we talk a lot about work-life balance. We changed our hybrid working policies. We had core hours. Everybody got personal days off. We have in-house doctors who are always available to talk to staff to help support them through. We have summer Fridays, so you work a bit longer Monday to Thursday and you can have Friday afternoons off. And it was all about making people feel like we can still work together, we can still connect, we can still be productive, we can still meet our targets, but we can still also do it in a way that now in this new world that we're living in makes more sense and is adapting to the new way of work. I remember going into the office 5 days a week. I can't imagine doing that now. It changes the way that you work. Does that mean I'm less productive? Does that mean things don't get done? No, it's just different. But I think extending that to everyone at all levels, no matter what role you do, no matter what department you're in, was really important. And that was a big, impactful change for us. I think what it also did in terms of Bloomsbury as a company, as I said, we're only 15 years old as an academic publisher. But what it has done is it's allowed us to reposition ourselves as actually quite a strong independent publisher, a publisher that is growing, a publisher that has ambition, a publisher that has people at the core of what they do. Because no matter, I think, how technology advances, no matter how many chat GPTs are out there, you still need people to verify. And you still need people to actually think, and you still need people to be able to trust what they're producing and what they're publishing. And so people are still very much at the core of everything we do. And I think technology is there to enhance and advance and to help us on that journey, but not to replace that journey. And that's something that we still as people feel very strongly about at Bloomsbury, that is ours to be on. So I think a lot of that impact has been around how we see ourselves and the position we take within the publishing industry, and how we're growing and how we want to thrive and the ambitions we have. But that also mirrors, I think, the way that we treat the people that we work with, whether that's colleagues internally, but also externally, our suppliers, our authors, our librarians, our customers. And so I think Michelle will talk a bit more about that.
So I think just to touch upon the authors and customers angle of this, I think what came out of the pandemic was obviously exactly what we note here: more engagement, increased trust, a lot more confidence, and that all led to a much stronger community overall. I think just that's something that we really try to thread throughout everything we do. It's something we hope to build and grow going forward. It all connects back to sort of what I said earlier. This was truly the great equalizer across the board. And I think we made the right judgment call, as many, many, many did, to really meet our customers and authors where they were. This was a collective shared experience that hopefully, will never go through the likes of it again. But I think just understanding that we were applying the right steps to bring them along with us was a real confidence builder. I think the market research group that was established throughout the pandemic was really the one change that made the most impact with our authors and customers, because it really guided all of us in all of our decision making. At a time when it was really difficult to make data-driven decisions, this was something that we could point to as a method to really just guide everything, and give us the answers that we were looking for. And then going forward. So where do we go from here for maintaining trust and transparency?
Yeah, so where do we go from here? I think, there's a lot of different things that the pandemic has taught us. A lot of good things we were doing before that we will continue. A lot of new things that we've learned along the way, both about ourselves, also about the industry that we work in, also about the different communities that we serve. Our practitioner communities of lawyers and barristers and solicitors require very different things to our student community. We require very different things to our academics and researchers, and that differs across subject areas as well. STEM is very different to humanities and social sciences and the arts, which is where Bloomsbury is very much entrenched in. We're not a journals publisher, we're a book publisher, a digital content publisher, audio and visual publisher. So that again sits us very differently to some of the other publishers and the challenges that they are facing. So where does that take us? Well, I think it takes us in a really exciting direction. We have a huge ambition to continue to grow, to take everyone with us on that journey, and really learn the lessons from what we have had to change over the last few years. For example, looking again internally at ourselves, we do more regular pulse surveys of staff to ask their opinion, to find out what they think, to really make sure that we're listening to people. We have employee voice meetings so that everyone has the opportunity to have their voice heard at the highest level. We have introduced something called lightning talks, which every month is a 45-minute session that anybody across academic can come and talk about something they're working on. So it's again about sharing knowledge. Hey, I went to this conference and I heard this really good talk, or I read this great article I thought you would really like to hear. We're doing this pilot, and actually we have a poster outside about open collections, which is the new pilot that Bloomsbury has just launched, which is really exciting and a really first move for us into the world of open access from a book's perspective. We have monthly newsletters. We have the working groups that I mentioned before. We also have lunch and learn. I'm sure many things that other publishers are also doing, but I think what we try to do is make sure that there is always an opportunity for people to learn, to share, to ask questions, and to make sure that they all buy into what we're doing. So again, it's about that engagement and that connection, which is what this session was all about. And hopefully we've given you a flavour of some of the things that we used to do, some of the things that we've changed, and how that has had a real impact on the way we work with our authors, our customers, and also internally. And our aim is always to continue to grow and to have our people, who are at the heart of everything we do, thrive and flourish in that environment. And we hope to continue doing that as we go forward. So thank you so much for your attention and time. And I hope you enjoyed hearing from us, and open to any questions. Thank you. We did actually have one question on the app that somebody posted around social media. What social media channels would we use to engage more with authors? Was one of the questions. Michelle, do you want to take that?
Sure. I don't know if this is, this is on, so I can just sit here instead. Thank you for whomever submitted that question. I think with regard to social media, I think it's an ever evolving landscape. We usually let our authors sort of guide, depending upon their platform and stature and status and outreach. We sort of let that guide our plan for them. As a publisher, we're obviously on every channel you could possibly think of, and we try to encourage our authors to, take advantage of social media and using that as an amplification for their own message. I think social media experience varies author to author, so it's really what we've done throughout the pandemic and even before, and what's really worked well, kind of guiding us into the next step is educating them the best that we can to show them what we do, what we were going to do for them, and then what they can in turn partner with us to do so we can do this together. But I think one thing that Pooja and I had discussed prior to this is that, I don't know if that question came from within this group or beyond. I don't even know sort of the landscape of, the sort of the roles that you all occupy. I guess we sort of throw the question back to you, and we're wondering, what is your experience with authors and social media? And do you have any strategic tips or tricks or any kind of comments to share?
Or not, as the case may be, in which case I could just give you actually one quick example of something that we did that was really interesting, where one of our editors posted on Twitter that they would be available between, 5 and 6. And if there were any potential authors out there that were interested in talking to come online between that time, and they would be available to talk. And we had like over 100 people actually reaching out to say, hey, I've got this idea about a new project. Would you like to talk? Can we fix a date to speak in more detail? And it was a really good way to use social media, actually, not just to promote something, but actually to use it to talk to people and offer a window to sort of coming in, approaching us and pitching your ideas. We did a number of sort of how to get published sessions as well, a lot of things that we would do via either Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and promote these sessions. But again, we're going to be online between this time and this time. If you're interested, come and talk to us. And actually throughout the pandemic, that worked so well. Those are things that we're continuing with now as well, actually, post-pandemic. So that's just one example of, I think, where social media can be a really force for good and actually open the doors to new audiences that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily perhaps meet at conferences or through the traditional networks. So that's just another one idea that we had. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Hi.
Hi. I noticed on your last slide there was a point about, I believe it was a fund for underrepresented authors.
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit?
Yes, of course. So part of our DEI plan was to really think about, and I think I mentioned this earlier, real sustainable, meaningful change. And so one of the things that we have launched just as of April is we call it the Widening Representation Fund. And the idea is that we have put some money aside to fund authors for things like image rights or permissions or language editing that will really help their piece of work, essentially. So it's authors that we've already been talking with, authors that we're working with on their piece of work. But the aim is to also obviously help people that are from less privileged backgrounds or don't have funding, or who we really want to be able to give a platform to. So we have a monthly meeting, and proposals will come to us through our editors, and we will look at them, and we're tracking who we're funding so that we can see at the end of this pilot how many people we've helped, where they've come from, their affiliation, and then hopefully this is something after this pilot, if we feel that it has actually made a difference, that we will continue year on year. And we're actually also later this year launching a fellowship scheme as a pilot initially. And this is specifically focusing at Black authors from the UK in this pilot who are publishing works in one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which something I know my colleague at the back there, Nicola, knows so much about. But there are areas that Bloomsbury actually has already published in for many years, be that gender politics, whether that's around climate change, whether that's around poverty. But we've never really actually thought about it, I guess, in a more cohesive way. So one of the things that we're doing is not only to bring all of that content together and surface it more visibly, but we're also putting some money behind really trying to recruit authors from diverse backgrounds to publish that work and to come to us. So there'll be more on that over coming months. So look out for that. Thank you. Hi.
Just to follow up on that, the representation from, is there a geographic criteria for that? Is it equally like developed and make that?
Obviously, it's open to everybody at this point. So again, it's a pilot. So we're looking to see how many people will apply, where they're from. Obviously, we looking at if you're from Harvard, you probably won't get it. But if you're from University of Brazil or somewhere which is perhaps in the global south, perhaps where you don't have a lot of funding, where you perhaps haven't been published so much before, we want to give a platform to those authors. So we've got a set criteria. There are certain things that authors have to tick off, but there's no restriction at the moment in terms of globally or any particular region or any subject actually either. So this is very open, and it really is a pilot. So we're hoping to learn from it and then establish. Sorry, did you have another point? Yeah.
So is that coded in any way for selling products like that is coming or being supported by this?
Yeah, so it really is purely just to help, purely to help authors. The money's coming straight from Bloomsbury. It doesn't go against the book. The authors don't get charged anything. This is purely a fund that we have put together to help them with those publication costs. So it's not about open access fees. It's purely about language editing, real actual publication costs of producing a piece of work. So this is not anything to do with open access whatsoever. Hi.
Hi. It's interesting. This is more of a comment than a question. It's interesting to see Bloomsbury doing this from a book's perspective. So that approach being, we're seeing it increasingly being adopted in the journal books, where journal publishers say, okay, look, we know we've got a problem. We know we're trying to support authors in developing countries, countries. We want them to submit their content to us. They've got challenges. We need to find ways of making it available.
Yeah.
Either through subsidizing agencies, finding other channels. So it's just interesting to see, it'd be interesting to see, a year at a time, makes see all
exactly. Yeah, and look, I've been at Bloomsbury for 2 years now. Previous to that, I was at Spring and Nature, so I've come from a journals world and an STM journals world at that. So it is very different. And in humanities and social sciences, we're still, I think, quite behind in terms of funding, in terms of open access. But we really, I think this is something that differentiates Bloomsbury as well, is that we are actually putting our money where our mouth is. So we are really looking to put money up front to support really diversifying that author base and trying new pilots, trying new things. I don't know how successful this will be. As you said, it will be interesting in a year's time to see how many authors we've helped, where they've come from, what subjects they've published in, and then what impact that's had of us being able to publish their book and publish their work, and then look at the metrics of how many times it's been cited and used and downloaded. So, all of that is to come. So maybe this time next year I'll give you an update on that. But really, we're really looking to lead the way, and I think in our own way, not shouting out too much about it, but just trying to get on and see what we can do. Yeah. Thank you. Hi.
Yeah, I know that we're at time, so I'll try to keep it brief. And sorry for the subject of it, but I'm inspired by the way that you continue to foster connection with the world internally. So the press that I work at, you know, there's something similar, where it's just like a social coffee break on Fridays. And those have been really successful.
Right.
As like a local water cooler.
Right.
And the committee that this was initiated within, there's some maybe resistance to those efforts and do other things to increase connection for fear that there won't be a great turnout or people won't be interested. And that I think has created, and what we've heard is sometimes there's just a disconnect between departments,
Right.
especially in the virtual world.
Right.
Just don't know what it's doing. So what can you speak on some of the feedback and the turnout that we've got from some of the connection initiatives?
Yeah, so one that comes to mind specifically on that point is these lightning talks that I mentioned. So I introduced this when I first came to Bloomsbury. It's a monthly virtual meeting, 45 minutes long. I chair them every month. And anybody across the division can come, whether you're in sales, marketing, editorial, production, whatever. And you come, you speak for no more than 5 minutes about something that you're doing. So I kick them off and I'll talk about strategy or about a meeting I've been to or something that we're doing. Somebody else may talk about a big author that they've just signed and what that means. Somebody else will talk about a new workflow initiative that they've introduced. Just last month, we had a talk about the open access, open collections launch and the update on that. And the idea is that that's a way of getting everyone from different departments to actually share what's going on so that people, again, feel like they know what's happening. Otherwise, I think in most companies, every department have different priorities. Everyone's got their head down and working on what they've got to do. And sometimes it's very difficult to pause and to actually connect all the dots together, that we're actually working towards a shared goal here, and we're not competing against each other. And so something like that has worked really well for us. We have on average about, I would say, between 70 to 100 people attending every month. Sometimes there's one speaker, sometimes there's 3 speakers. And sometimes when there's no speaker, then I just talk. So, it just depends on, what people are doing. But I also think coming from a senior member of the team, if you can make that happen, would just add a little bit more gravitas to it, because there's always something to talk about and there's always something happening, but you just need to kind of have a forum where you can pull that together. So if you can replicate this kind of lightning talk idea, I would certainly say that would be the way to go. You're most welcome.
I just have to second that, because as somebody who really encourages her team to participate in these lightning talks, it's such a lovely bite-sized window into what someone else is doing. And I completely sympathize and commiserate with the whole, we've all gone through this Zoom fatigue and, forced fun and all of that kind of thing that people try to foster community. But this is a genuine way, because what people really want to know is, what are you doing during your day and how are you spending your day? I mean, it's the personal aspects do flow in, but I think on a professional level, it's heartening to know that somebody is maybe doing something complimentary to you or doing something that you can join up with them with. It's that greater connection that kind of fulfills that. And it's bite size. I think it's not a lot of your day, but it's a window into somebody else's. And that's really helpful.
I think we are at time, but if there was any other comments or questions. Hi.
American Psychiatric Association. Thank you so much for the talk. Thank you, really interesting. My question was just a follow-up on the enlightenment. Have you and the lunch and learns, do you do work in person or do you do them hybrid, completely online? It sounds they worked out
Yeah, thank you. The lightning talks are all virtual. So, and I've done those specifically virtual because we are only in the office 2 days a week. And those 2 days you want to meet people in person rather than be on more calls. So that was a purposeful thing. With the lunch and learns, we try to do them in person. We also, in the working groups that I mentioned, we try to do those meetings in person, but there's always an element of somebody who's at home. So it's about having a hybrid meeting. So you'll always have a couple of people online and some people in the room. And then I always follow up with an email and a recording if I'm recording. And all of these lightning talks, by the way, I record online on Teams, and then I send the recording around to everyone. So even if you couldn't attend, you still get the recording. You get a summary of my notes with it every month as well. So I think that's the other way to keep connected, is if you can record sessions, send them around, make sure people have a chance to look at them in their own time. But also, if it is in person, I always also just do a quick email summary of the key points. And if people have questions and couldn't attend or want to know more, to come and call me or talk to whoever the person is afterwards. So I think there's always an opportunity some way or another to find out what's happening. But recording the sessions has been a really good idea. And I mean, there are so many ways that you can do this, but I think it's giving people options as well is really important. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everybody. It's so lovely to see you. Thanks again.
Thank you.